Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals On The Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm your host, Joe Goodberry. This is episode 88, and while we typically, some days I forget, but typically go over the best players to wear 88, 88 might be the number the Bengals have really never had success with in their history. And you could go with maybe a Bruce Coslett, who, sure, Mike Martin from the 80s. Again, these are not great players. Hayden Hurst recently. Tad Berry wore 88, had a moment, at least had a moment. So that's a good thing. But yeah, not a lot of great number 88s in the Bengals history. So we won't focus on it and spend too much time on it today. But what we do have are organized team activity, workouts, practices for the Bengals this past week. We're not, if you're not on the internet, if you're not, and here you are on YouTube, but if you're not on like Twitter, if you're not following along, if you're not going to other websites and other reporters and getting the breakdown of what's happening, only one day was open to the media. That was day one of the 3 practices. And then we got some reports from Thursday's practice via a subscriber on my Twitter page that went up on the bridge and gave us a rundown and gave us some notes of what he observed. We're going to go over a few of these storylines and go over some of the things that we've seen in practice from the clips, from the reports of the reporters that were there, and from my guy Ian that was up on the bridge Thursday night. So that's what this episode will focus on. What do the Bengals look like in the spring? They do have mandatory coming up in a couple weeks in June before we get to the real thing, the training camp practices when summer rolls around. And so while expectations here are not, we're not expecting anything crazy during OTAs. It's not, the pace isn't extreme. They're not hitting. It's not huge contact. Big thing, story number one is always, how does Joe Burrow look? Does he look different from the last time we saw him? He's been throwing about 3 months now. So where is he at in his recovery? Bengals say there's no limits. They expect him to be hitting every single step in his progression and getting back and ready for not just camp, but week 1 and ready to go. Sounds like he practiced the first 2 days and then did not throw on Thursday. But what we did see in the clips from especially, what was it, Monday or Tuesday, the first day? It was Tuesday, because I remember it was right when I was recording my episode for Tuesday's episode, last week's episode, where we talked about the Ring of Honor for the Bengals. But sounds like Joe Burrow, and looks like Joe Burrow is sharp and crisp and accurate. And they're working on a lot of play action, a lot of RPO stuff, which is a run pass option, typically where you're reading a linebacker or a second level defender and choosing whether to hand the ball off, or typically it's like a slant right behind him. So if you vacate the area, we're going to hit the slant. Also with Burrow, they're working on a lot of off script, moving his platform and his launch angle. Typically, if everything goes right, you drop back, you read it, and you throw, right? But sometimes you got to move from that spot. Sometimes you got to avoid pressure, go to a second, third, fourth read, and make a throw off platform. Burrow's really good at this, but it's something they're emphasizing as part of his rehab. And you could see it in the clips. They were really, really working on his pocket movement and throwing on the run and off platform. So given all that, it looks like he is in great shape. He's got great spin on the ball. I thought when we saw him, what was that? Right after the rookies were drafted, so it was rookie OTAs. I thought the balls were a little bit wobbly and weird, but this week and all the clips we got were very, very sharp from him as the offense looks to install what they can without the players that didn't show up to voluntary OTAs. I want to be clear on that. And that's Jamar Chase and Tee Higgins. Clearly with Tee Higgins, we got a contract dispute. With Jamar Chase, he really hasn't shown up to the voluntary stuff the last couple of years anyway, so I don't think it's like Adam Schefter tweeted out, waiting on new contracts. Neither of these two guys are at Bengals voluntary OTAs. And that's like half true. I'm sure Jamar Chase would like his new deal, but he seems to understand the process and the order that it's going to come in, whereas he's never really come to the voluntary OTAs anyway. And Tee Higgins, of course, is not going to show up. And I don't expect him to show up until the final week before the regular season starts. unless they get a deal done, which again, we don't expect. We could probably spend a few minutes talking about Tee Higgins and other receivers getting signed. Nico Collins in Houston, Jalen Waddle in Miami. That sparked up the conversation as those two were extended. But again, those two had cheap remaining deals or years left on their current deal, which lowers the cap hit of their extension. Bengals don't have that luxury with Tee Higgins because they didn't sign him 2 years ago or a year ago when they could have. And now the longer it goes, the more players that get signed, the bigger the guaranteed money that rolls in for these other contracts, makes it less and less likely that T will extend and be in Cincinnati past, not just this year. Maybe he gets tagged 2 years in a row if he absolutely balls out, and the $25 million year two tag wouldn't be extreme if these guys are signing for 28, 30, 32, 35 million. If Justin Jefferson really breaks the bank, that would be nothing for Tee Higgins if he has like a 1,400-yard season. So the other two guys that aren't there, Sheldon Rankins, Trent Brown, I think both were very expected by the Bengals when they signed both of these guys. Keep them healthy, especially for like Trent Brown, right? If one of the benefits to Brown taking a very cheap deal that the Bengals got offered him and he accepted, obviously, was that, hey, we're not going to overwork you. We're going to make sure you're healthy and ready to go week one. And then the drafting of Marius Mims really gives them some flexibility and a win-win situation with this. Trent Brown isn't there. Fine. Marius Mims is getting all the reps, everything he could want and need, and what the team probably would like from him, getting him all the reps to develop and get within the flow and catch up on all the things he missed in college due to being a backup and then injuries. This is how you do it, right? So I expect him to get a lot of the training camp snaps. I expect him to get a lot of the preseason snaps. And you save Trent Brown for the regular season. Just get him up to speed. And that seems like part of the plan. Same thing sort of applies for Sheldon Rankins. I think they were aware he wasn't going to be here for this. He will be there for mandatory stuff. That's not, when you sign, these things very often happen where a guy's like, hey, and I don't know that this happened. I just mean it happens around the league. You'll see it where a guy will sign and it's like, hey, we don't need you there for voluntary. We'll see you when it's mandatory. Sometimes that's part of the deal. Rankins has dealt with injuries in his past. Let's keep him healthy. We're going to need him to play a big role this year. So keep him away for him now. So while you don't have the two receivers and you don't have probably your best defensive tackle and your right tackle, who is playing in those spots? First, let's go back in order. Zach Carter seems to still be the defensive tackle filling in for Sheldon Rankins right now. You may be wondering why not Chris Jenkins. I think all the rookies are going to take a back seat until they get caught up and get up to speed. Training camp is typically where they're allowed to compete and fight for jobs. So as of now, it's more status quo, and guys they want to give reps to. So Chris Jenkins is getting his reps with the twos, and that makes a lot of sense. And same with McKinley Jackson. He was a third-round pick, so it wasn't that much later. But starters are Hill and Carter right now at defensive tackle. While at right tackle, Marius Mims is getting those reps at the right side. Talked about the benefits there. I won't rehash that. At receiver, the Bengals are doing a lot of 12 personnel. I'll put a pin in that for a second, which means 2 tight ends, which means you can only have 2 wide receivers out there. So when they do, it's Yoshi, it's Andre Yosubash, and Trenton Irwin. Irwin, when he signed his one-year deal, is reported that he had the idea, or at least the way it was reported, which I assume it came from the agent when it was reported nationally, was that he will compete for the third wide receiver job, the starting slot job. And when the Bengals go 3 wide, it sounds like Charlie Jones is getting a lot of the slot work as well. Trent Irwin getting some of that. And to me, in the clips, I think Charlie Jones looks like he may have taken a positive step in his development. Not only does he look quicker, faster, more deliberate in a lot of his cuts and movements. There was a couple clips where he goes up for the ball and has some nice hands catches. It seems like he's working really well with Joe Burrow, and they're getting in sync a little bit. And then number 2 is Jermaine Burton. So if you're wondering where's Burton in that, shouldn't he be one of the starters? Again, with the rookies, I feel like they're bringing him along slowly. It does seem like Burton's putting in a lot of extra work with Joe Burrow, which is only going to pay off and help him get on the field and gain his quarterback's trust, which again, for the slot receiver is going to be a big thing. And I think Burton can do a lot of, moving him around and figuring out if he's a outside and a slot, which I expect him to be. I think that's part of the appeal with a Jermaine Burton is that they can move him around. And we've discussed that, especially when we did his film and talked about what his strengths and weaknesses are. And I can see in the video, my neck is leaning. I've got a stiff neck, guys. You know what I mean? Getting older. Anyways, so what we have seen with 12 personnel is a lot more two tight ends, which is Mike Gesicki, and he's been flexed going out wide. They're going to go and split out and go empty, as we've seen them do all before. Joe Burrow likes that. They've been efficient in empty packages. Gesicki can play in the slot, can move around, can do a lot of things, and be a different type of player that they've had at tight end. That size and those ball skills are definitely an advantage, and something that I expect the Bengals and Joe Burrow to take advantage of. Drew Sample being the Y blocking type, inline type tight end. I've seen a lot of clips with him out there, and then Hudson backing them up. We have not yet seen Eric All or Tanner McLaughlin, the two rookies they have drafted, both still recovering for different various things. Sounds like McLaughlin has a core muscle, which sometimes it could just be that or a hernia. They don't have to get specific at this time. I don't want to speculate, but core muscle, I'm just trying to describe what that may be. While Eric All is still coming back from his knee injury. And he says he'll be ready for training camp. So that'd be a nice boost. Now, it does look like at running back, we are getting a lot of Chase Brown in these clips. It is not just Zach Moss at the level it was Joe Mixon when we would get clips at this point the last couple years, where it was like, oh yeah, Mixon's still their RB1. It does seem like, and I reached out to reporters that were there and asked the same thing. Does it seem like Chase Brown is mixed in as much as it feels like from the clips we're getting? And they said, oh yeah, both of them agreed on this. So that's positive. That's one of my big hopes for this offense, is that they don't lean on a running back one anymore and make it more of a committee approach. And Chase Brown, because of his explosiveness, I really want to see him be a big part of this offense and see, what that explosiveness can add to this team, because we really haven't seen that. Mixon's been good, and Samaje Perine was a serviceable backup, right? He had a lot of good moments as well, but neither guy was a burner in the way that Chase Brown was. And I think getting a weapon added to this offense, you potentially, even if it's just Burton and Chase Brown, that's two explosive weapons. But they also did, I think, if you're getting something in Charlie Jones, if you can use him as a gadget guy or a rotational piece, that's speed that they did not have at the depth. If Trent Irwin was their number 4, take the Chiefs AFC Championship game that they lost. Tyler Boyd goes down, and it's just Chase and Higgins, right? And no one really cared about Trent Irwin in the slot from the Chiefs. They didn't. And Hayden Hurst even at tight end. They weren't worried about it. If you add a Gesicki there, that's more of a weapon. Remember, 2 years ago, Gesicki was franchise tagged in Miami. I mean, there is a path to him being a very. If I guessed right now and said, who is the number 3 guy this season in terms of targets, and let's say we put the odds or put the candidates at Trenton Irwin, Jermaine Burton, Mike Gesicki, and maybe one of the running backs, maybe it's Zach Moss. Can Zach Moss get the 60-something targets? He could. Joe Mixon got there, but if we expect more of a split. But of those 4, I would say the most likely is Gesicki to have the most targets out of that grouping, because Jermaine Burton is a rookie. I know we're all happy and excited about Burton, but he's a rookie. And those guys tend to, if he ends up with 60 targets, that's good. That's a good rookie year. And he catches 45 or so, 40, 38, we'd take that all day long, because of his explosive rate should even give him like 38 catches at 18 yards per catch could happen. And that could be a very, very fun rookie year out of him. But then again, the number 3 target option could be Mike Gesicki in this offense. So Chase Brown, Burton, Gesicki, you've added enough weapons to this team to make it fun if they all hit. And there's a chance that, I don't want to forget Andre Osibach, right? He's going to play, and he's going to play a lot, and he sounds excited about his opportunity, and he seems aware of what he could do in that spot without Tee Higgins being out there, which is big. So I really want to see Yoshi. He did have a drop. I saw similar situation where he just is not plucking the ball with his hands, and sometimes in traffic. Remember that last game against the Browns? He had like 3 drop contested missed opportunities, however you want to classify them. Similar situation, Gator arming it, and being a little bit too passive with the ball, and look very similar to that. So we got to see him, secure that thing, go up and get it, catch it with your hands. Even on a lot of his highlight plays, he's catching it with his body while he's going deep and going downfield. Back shoulder stuff, catching it, turning it with his body. You want to see a more confident hands catcher for him to take the next step. But Also, it's hard to see from OTAs, but route running, obviously, you got anytime you're coming from a small school, I'm going to be focusing this camp and preseason on the route running of Charlie Jones and especially Andre Osubash. And then Jermaine Burton, of course. We got a lot of young receivers to nitpick a little bit here on this, and not in a bad way, but in a how good can they be type of way. So moving on to the defensive side, while we already talked about the defensive tackles and expect a 4-man rotation there, and they've talked about Jay Tufele also competing and playing, so maybe he still makes the roster as a fifth. He's been at least, I would say he's been better than Zach Carter, but I think they still have hopes for upside in Carter and would like to develop him and see him get to that spot. But the corner position, Dax Hill sounds like completely. We've talked about Dax playing corner. We've talked about the move to corner, but seeing him out there, seeing him get reps there, split reps almost with DJ Turner is interesting. Because I think if Dax is going to succeed in the secondary, it's going to be at like a strong safety, slot corner type of role, a Tyrann Mathieu, a Buda Baker type role, Jimmy Ward type role. Boundary corner is weird. It does not happen too often that a safety moves to boundary corner and has success. Now he's got the length and the size and the straight line speed, so maybe he can do it. He's still only 23. L'Jarius Sneed, the successful corner for the Chiefs the last few years, played safety his last year in college, and he was a 23-year-old rookie. So, like, maybe if you do it by a certain time in their age, they can still develop and become that guy. I just hate moving his position around so many times because as a rookie, what was he? He was a Swiss Army, back up every position. Great. Clearly, that did not help his development in year 2 when you tried to make him a free safety, and he's never done that before. And now we're moving him to boundary corner. And then I could see in year 4 when Mike Hilton's gone because his contract's up after this year, they say, hey, Dex, now you're a slot corner, which is like, that is the blueprint for screwing up a first-round pick, right? Just keep moving around to different positions and until he lands on one. And if he's good in the slot corner, now you got to extend him after 1 year of good production. Again, not ideal. But what makes more sense here, or what makes us happier? If they find out Dax can play outside corner, and now you've got Dax and Cam Taylor-Britt, but now I'm benching DJ Turner. Is that good? Is that a win? Is that a positive? If DJ Turner just beats out Dax Hill, is that great? Because are we expecting Dax to be good? What if Dax is just bad there? And then so now DJ just has to start. And we don't know if he bounces back or gets better than what he was down the stretch last year. I don't feel great about what the Bengals have done at corner this year in terms of getting a veteran in here and getting someone that can compete. And I know they added Josh Newton as well, so we'll see how that goes. But getting there's got to be a veteran out there. And I know there's like Stephon Gilmore still out there and Xavier Howard still out there and Eli Apple, things like that. But I don't feel like if they're letting Dax compete with DJ Turner, then to me that reads you're not very confident in DJ Turner. Or it's just pressure to get Dax on the field, which happens in organizations sometimes where they're like, the front office is like, hey, we spent a first-round pick. But again, the 31st pick, right, was Dax versus the 55th pick for DJ Turner. There's not much of a difference there. Whoever wins that job was a premium pick and helps the team out. And they both have basically 3 years left on their deal if you pick up the 5th-year option for Dax Hill. So I don't know which one's a win there. I don't know. Are we rooting for Turner or Hill? Is that a situation you root for? I don't know. It's so weird for me because you don't normally see 2 premium picks fighting for one job, especially one moving to that job. But it also, if Dax wins that job and then Turner goes and plays the slot, or do you just say, all right, Turner or Dax in 2025, you're going to kick into the slot and Turner will be back out in the boundary. Again, it creates a bit of a mess in a lot of ways. So just something to keep an eye on, how much that rotation. It sounds like Cam Taylor-Britt didn't work on Thursday's practice, and DJ Turner and Dax Hill were your 2 outside corners on that day. So again, interesting. He's getting both sides work at that point, and maybe they're resting Cam Taylor-Britt. I don't know. I didn't get word on that. That was from Ian up on the bridge on Thursday. Other notes on the defense. This is probably the biggest one I'll spend time on as we transition from Dax Hill and the bit of frustration that's going on there. Von Bell and Geno Stone were brought in to smooth over some of the communication issues they had at safety, right? And maybe this is just OTA stuff, but it looks like your starters right now are Geno Stone and Von Bell, the two veterans. And now you may say, well, what about Jordan Battle? Jordan Battle is working with the twos and has some plays that he's getting in there. I can see based off the clips that we got that Battle was out there with starters, but it looked like as the third safety in sub packages. So is it a true battle? No pun intended, with Von Bell, or is he the third safety and going to be in packages? Because I don't know if that's a win. I understand the communication aspect, and maybe because Von Bell knows Lou Anarumo's scheme and verbiage, that he's out there now to get everyone up to speed, or and then maybe Battle takes over later in camp preseason and can win that job, and maybe we're just seeing it now, or is it really like we really hated the communication aspect last year, and we're going to go with Geno Stone and Von Bell as our starters, and we'll mix in Jordan Battle and let them develop for one more year? Because that's scary too. Because when you're in a championship window, you need a couple of things. Number one, you need young players to play and play well. You need young starters, as many as possible. Battle represented that through the second half of the year. He looked like a guy that should end up being a good starter for them. Now, I did have some reservations. Remember, we watched the film. I said, he's not reacting fast enough. He doesn't athletically look like the fastest guy out there. A little bit more time and experience should go a long way for Jordan Battle. And I still believe that. And I think you need to get him on the field and get him ready to be one of your future centerpieces on that defense. Don't wait to get him out there when you only get 2 good years out of him or 1 good year and then you extend him. Because then you're losing all value of a young draft pick that you hit on, if he is that. Now, I would say that them putting Von Bell over top of him on the depth chart right away is probably an indication of how they felt he played last year. And maybe we overvalued what Jordan Battle did, and they are leaning on the veterans again in the secondary, which, again, is something we'll have to keep an eye on. Because that even at those three, your Geno Stones, your Von Bell, and your Jordan Battle, you are a very unathletic trio at safety. That's one of the reasons why I didn't like kicking Dax out of that room. Because to me also, say you signed a veteran corner to compete with DJ Turner. You let Dax stay in the safety room and play slot corner. And when you go to these sub packages, instead of bringing Jordan Battle down to go cover the tight end, that's what Dax is for. Dax, you go cover the tight end. So now you don't really have that guy. And you don't have to be athletic to be very good. You don't have to be an elite athlete like Dax Hill to cover tight ends. So Jordan Battle could do this and could look really good at that. So I don't want to judge first. I'm just judging based on what we have. And the information that is in front of us looks like they got much less athletic at safety this year, but the communication should be improved and the veteran experience should be improved, which is maybe all they care about at that spot. And we'll see how that goes and see if their theory is correct on that. But I would like to see more of a rotation. I would like to see Jordan Battle get out there and get a fair shake at winning that job. I will also end with some special teams. Sounds like Charlie Jones will get a chance to kick return, as the kick return rules have changed, maybe how that's going to go. So that'll be interesting there. But also the battle for punter between Austin McNamara, who is the undrafted rookie, and Brad Robbins, last year's rookie, second-year player, I guess you just call it. We're both holding and rotating being holders to end practice on Thursday as Evan McPherson blasted some 50-yard kicks. And sounds like they did their job and did it well because McPherson was hitting them. So we got a long way to go on that battle. That will be a battle for punter, but also for holder. Don't forget holder. If everything goes right and the offense is good, you will hold more than you will punt. And also, I think it was a note from Dan Horde said that McNamara was also working on kickoffs. So it gives the Bengals a second option for kickoffs as well if he can do that, which is, again, another feather in his cap to beating out Brad Robbins if that's the case. So something to keep an eye on there. We've got a few more minutes here. I want to jump to something and end it with a little fun on the last segment of the show. I hope you enjoyed the recaps. Again, leave the comments. I love reading the comments, but we got one more thing. I want to do the top 10 Bengals for 2024. So the top 10 Cincinnati Bengals players for 2024. This started on Twitter. Someone asked, who are the top 5 players on your team right now? Or was it top 3? Either way, I'm going to go from 1 to 10 here because I think it's more interesting to get to 10 than it is to rank number 1 and 2, who we know who they are. Number 1 is Joe Burrow. Number 2 is Jamar Chase. Easy, right? Or some people commented that Jamar Chase is the better player than Joe Burrow and should be number 1, which fine. I wouldn't actually argue against that. Jamar Chase, when I do my grading scale, and I'm in the book for that first star produced last year, and hopefully we do that again, came out number 1 as well in terms of grade. So if you want to make that argument, I would not fight against it. Mix them any way you want. I think number 3 is easily Trey Hendrickson. We're talking about an elite Pro Bowl level player, elite pass rusher. Sure, he's not a great player against the run, but what he does when it's crunch time is remarkable, and he stands out every time they need a play. Seems like he's the guy to make it. He's number 3 to me. I think there's a gap now, and a big enough gap to where those guys are like Pro Bowl cornerstone players. The next grouping are good players with warts, good players with injury issues, good players that aren't maybe every down players, or you'll see. Number 4 for me is Tee Higgins. Obviously, good player when he's on the field and when he's healthy and when he's performing at a high level. But there are times with Higgins where we don't see that, and he's rough around the edges. And hopefully, we get good Tee Higgins this year because I think he could be number 3 on this team when all cylinders are clicking. Number 5 to me is Mike Hilton. Maybe the last, if those top 3 guys are blue chip players, and maybe sometimes Higgins is, sometimes Mike Hilton is as well. And I know he's only a slot corner, so he's not out there for 90% of the plays, but he's out there the most of any corner of the last 3 years because of how much he plays in the Bengals 3 corner defense, and their nickel defense is what that means. But he's a big player for them. Impact player, captain, great personality, smart dude, helped with a lot of communication last year as well. He's number 5. Number 6 to me is Orlando Brown Jr. I know some people were disappointed with his 2023 campaign coming over from the Chiefs to the Bengals. I thought he was mostly, when I say mostly, like 90% who I expected him to be in a lot of ways. And he had a lot of good flashes on tape and a lot of good moments in games, despite the offense kind of falling apart in a lot of ways. Remember, Burrow was hurt. They couldn't get the run game going. Higgins wasn't himself all year long, and then Burrow got hurt again. And what did we really expect to learn from that offense when it seemed like pretty much everyone underperformed in a lot of ways until the young guys started playing and there was some new juice on that offensive side. But Brown was his durable, strong self as usual. Number 7, Logan Wilson. I think Logan Wilson, for me now, this puts Trey Hendrickson, it puts Mike Hilton, third best player on defense, Logan Wilson. I think he's very underrated, still nationally. And this is a guy that in coverage gets his hands on the ball as much, if not more, than any linebacker in the NFL. Smart dude, sure tackler. He's dealt with some nagging injuries, and I wish he had better straight line speed, long speed, but really we're talking about a linebacker, and I'm nitpicking at that point. I think Logan Wilson's a very, very good player. Number 8 is Cam Taylor-Britt. A lot of people thought Cam should have been way higher. I even had someone comment that they thought Cam Taylor-Britt was number 4 on this list. I think it's a bit premature. I know he had a core section of games where he was rattling off interceptions, but I think last year because he was dealing with injuries again 2 years in a row, but there were times he was picking and choosing a little bit too much of when he wanted to tackle and how he wanted to tackle. And if he wanted to be that physical defender in the run game and on screens and things like that, I think that is a key part to having a full functioning offense is your corners have to be able to tackle. And I don't think the Bengals did a good enough job at corner last year being physical players on the edge. So Cam Taylor-Britt is number 8, could be a lot higher with a good year. I could see a scenario where he's number 4 with a good year. So I'm not counting it before it happens, but if that's what you believe, then I completely get it. Number 9, we're getting to the end of the list now. Number 9, when these last 2 guys are going to be additions to the team this year. Geno Stone at safety. And to me, Geno Stone on tape last year was fantastic. He was the guy I wanted them to sign. He was the guy that, to me, I thought was like, that's the free safety you need to add to this team, get some ball skills, get that anticipation and intelligence into this room. Geno Stone, for me, is a very, very good player coming off a very, very good year. I don't think he's an elite player, so that's why I'm number 9. Like some Ravens fans, I've seen them comment on my stuff and then talk about Geno Stone and say like, well, he's a little overrated. He had 7 picks last year, but he's not that good. Listen, we're not saying he's that good. We're saying he's the 9th best player on the team. I think that's fair. And I think some people may have him even lower. The grouping we have here is probably a lot of similar players in all. Number 10 then. Again, very similar player. Trent Brown, the right tackle, left tackle. He's going to play right for the Bengals from the New England Patriots. Spent some time with the Raiders. Trent Brown, to me, is a very, very good pass blocker. Maybe the best pass blocker on the entire offensive line in Cincinnati. Talking about another 6'8", 360-pounder. Worse body than the 3 guys they have on the team, clearly. And I think that's why he's dealt with injuries. When he's been healthy, he's been very, very good in pass pro. He's a effective run blocker in the way, not as in effective, but the way he affects defensive line, if you know what I'm saying there. If you pass 8th grade English, with an A, he affects a defensive lineman and moves them at the point of attack, and really they bend to his will because of how much raw power he has. And I think Trent Brown is going to elevate this offensive line from, before he was signed, I was thinking you're going to have to start a rookie at that right tackle spot. And how good can you be with Volson and a rookie? If Volson takes a small step forward, he's still subpar for what you want at that position. And rookies typically perform at a subpar level at right tackle. Then you have average at right guard, average at center, and maybe above average at left tackle. Can you be better than average on the offensive line if that's your unit? But Trent Brown can be good at right tackle. And now I don't have to play a rookie there. And now I'm like, okay, the floor is probably an average offensive line output. And I think getting him is big in order to raise the level of the floor here for the offensive line. And maybe it can be really good. The other guys in that grouping, though, I think this is all one grouping. Geno Stone, Trent Brown at 9 and 10. I guess we're ranking the other guys real quick here. But Sheldon Rankins, Alex Kappa, Jermaine Pratt are the next guys I had in consideration, just missing the cut for the top 10 players for the Bengals in 2024. Let me know where you differ. Let me know who you would have in that top 10, or maybe where my rankings were completely wrong and you disagree. I like the disagreements. I like to see your opinions. Leave it in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter at Joe Goodberry. This has been Bengals on the Brain, episode 88, presented by First Star Logistics. I am your host, Joe Goodberry. Until next time, Uday.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realize self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.